this is still a buyer's market.
Right.
They were given that land by the government. So then all of a sudden, all these workers that didn't own anything became owners.
I've never seen anything remotely close to this situation. If we haven't answered that we'd like to address, we're going to talk a little bit about the Ninja Samurai.
The what?
The Ninja Samurai.
The Ninja Samurai.
The Ninja Samurai.
Okay.
Which... Hello and welcome back to the Ecuador Insider Podcast. Jesse, Carlitos, and Brandon. How you guys doing? Thanks for coming back to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. I just want to give a quick shout out to all of our incredible commenters and viewers.
Yep.
The energy has been amazing. We really, truly appreciate it. Like actually, right? It kind of keeps you motivated and happy and going to share, what life is like here.
Yep.
We sort of stepped up the content game recently. We're continuing to do so. So there's going to be a lot of content coming out. A lot of new people are finding the channel now. That's fun. It's exciting. We really enjoy interacting with you. Brandon is kind of the interactor in chief in our comments section. So he does an amazing job, trying to answer questions, talking to you guys. It's been a lot of fun. Like it's actually really enjoyable.
It's really engaging when you guys share your stories, when you have anecdotes. If you've been to Ecuador, if you've not been to Ecuador, if you're sharing experiences about the way you live life and your lifestyle from where you are and what you really are looking forward to, anything like that you can share, that helps other people understand new perspectives and how it relates to their current lifestyle and what life can look like here. So any of that kind of stuff is really awesome. It's really fun. You can see other folks on the channel also engaging with you and sharing their insights and anecdotes. So please continue to do that. And of course, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Anything we talk about on the pod or any of the content, drop questions below. We try and get back to as many as we can. It's overwhelming, but we try and get back to as many as we can. If you have any specific detailed questions that you don't want to share publicly over chat, send us a note on info@abecuador.com and we'd be happy to help you out where we can and get back to you with any specifics that you need.
Yep. Absolutely. So you just...
No. Well, I wanted to say today we are sharing a beautiful bottle of Mora blackberry wine. This was a gift from a friend, client, visitor here in Vilcabamba. Trevor and his wife Monica gave us this great bottle of sweet Vilcabamba wine from Ambrosia. So we're going to share that on the pod today, as we did before. It helps loosen up things, especially for Jesse. He's a little uptight sometimes, so just start.
Hey Carl, let me ask you a question. What time is it right now in Ecuador?
What time is it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if we want to share that. It's happy hours.
Does it bother you being an alcoholic?
No, not yet.
Thanks, Trevor and Monica.
Cheers, Trevor and Monica. We appreciate
Cheers,
it. Oh, we jumped the gun.
We did.
Well, let's see. You did. Cheers.
Cheers.
Salud.
Señores. Salud. Santé. Just applies it here, and it's it's very mild.
It's like juice.
Good.
Right. This is the local
It's
sweet
a
wine.
sweid wine. So,
Yeah. Is this the one from the store across the street from us, or the one around the corner?
It
Across the street
reminds
from
me
us.
of, remember as kids, I don't know if you did this in Canada, but as a kid on Thanksgiving, we would get, as kids, my parents would get the Welch's grapefruit wine, sparkling. It kind of reminds
a little bit like
me.
that, yeah. It's a bit almost like a sangria, also.
Yeah,
Like
it's quite sangria.
something like that.
Yeah, throw some fresh fruit in there.
Probably
Hey,
Some bubbles.
hit the river.
You guys can dance around in a miniskirt.
Hey, great ideas.
Come on.
Wow.
Not even a chuckle.
Yeah.
All right. I just offended everybody.
Have some more wine.
I need to loosen up.
Listen up, bro.
All right, so we're gonna get into today some questions from YouTube. So some stuff we haven't answered that we'd like to address. We're gonna talk a little bit about the Ninja Samurai.
The what?
The Ninja Samurai.
The Ninja Samurai.
Ninja Samurai.
Okay.
Which probably 9 out of 10 or 99 out of 100 of you probably have not heard about. We had a Ninja Samurai event here in Vilcabamba.
A real life Ninja Samurai.
A real life Ninja
It was more
Samurai.
than that.
I mean,
It was
something
more than
like that.
It was a full-on military, what do you call it? Special force ninja samurai.
Yeah. So stay tuned. We're gonna hit that a little bit later in the pod. We're gonna hit some more serious things first.
Yeah, we'll chat. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
We'll chat a little bit about U.S. involvement in Ecuador because people have been asking about that. And what else? Yeah, I mean, so we've had some pretty amazing weather recently. I mean, the weather here is always amazing. Like a crappy day here is, 72 and cloudy, which I don't enjoy. but we've had some really amazing weather. I actually discovered over the weekend the best goat, seco de chivo, that I've had outside of Zapotillo. Goat is very difficult to prepare. It's very hard to find that done well. Down by in San Pedro. So I don't know. You probably showed Piedra Grande in your vlog, I would imagine.
Yeah, that was.
So,
Yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah.
I know you went there. Your wife told me. But
Yeah.
yeah, the same spot that I showed in my last vlog about San Pedro. You guys
Oh, it
went
was
there.
that restaurant.
Yeah. Right
Oh,
there, yeah.
sweet. Dude, the goat was amazing.
Nice.
So that was fun and enjoyed a great day with the family over the weekend. I'm gonna start showing some of that stuff on the channel. I wasn't planning to put a vlog out that day, but I did get some footage and I was like, F it, let's just make a vlog.
F it.
I mean,
Whoa.
no.
This podcast is not for children.
No. No, but so that'll be coming out. But I'm gonna start to make some vlogs, just kind of like going about my business on the weekends, so people can see, what life is actually like. And you're doing an awesome job on that, Carl. But
Thanks.
what life is actually like here, because I think when again, we go back to sort of the news and all that stuff. When you're seeing sort of it's all about crime and drug lords and criminal activity and what government response, and if you go in the Facebook groups, it's a whole world of madness in there. And if you haven't been here, don't live here, you might have some really bad impressions, wrong impressions. So I just kind of want to show people like this is town, this is the river, this is the restaurant. So start doing some of that.
Yeah, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I'm not on Facebook. I don't participate in the Facebook groups. I have a Facebook account from back when you have to have a college ID, a university email.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how to log into it. So I have a Facebook account somewhere out there, but it's not been updated in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so I created a fake one just when I was exploring Costa Rica and in Ecuador before I came here, just to kind of ask questions and stuff anonymously. So occasionally I'll just kind of log in and look. And I recently saw some folks asking in some of the Vilcabamba and Ecuador expat groups, asking about, I had a plan, I had travel plans for this time, in a couple of months, or in February, in March, I was coming down for a retreat, blah, all these different things. My son is concerned, my wife is concerned, my husband is having second thoughts. What do you guys say that are there? And it was actually, it was overwhelmingly positive in regard to, really good advice. Like, hey, like, people not saying like, make this decision. It's like, do what you want. I'll share with you what my life is like in the area I'm in. And it was from all different parts of Ecuador. And people were chiming in saying, hey, this is how it's been for us living here. We've been here for 20 years. We've been here for 5 years. We've been here and they're sharing that experience. And it was like, I was like, wow, I was expecting the opposite in some ways. But in a lot of these groups, I saw some really healthy, honest feedback that kind of corresponded to the way we are living here and the way it feels like here. And then we have some of those groups here where it is kind of like an echo chamber of negativity and fear. But I didn't see that on some of these larger expat groups across Ecuador. So that was interesting for me to see.
Very cool. Yeah. Just wanted to mention anecdotally, once again, my father flew into Guayaquil about 2 weeks ago, took a bus from Guayaquil to Montanita, spent a couple of weeks in Montanita, then again took a bus from Montanita to Guayaquil, went to Cuenca for a few days, and arrived in Vilcabamba last night, all through the bus system or some of the shuttles and stuff. He said everything was basically normal in Cuenca, same thing on the coast, very few police, very few military, even in Guayaquil, it was pretty much everything was normal-ish. And on some of those groups, I guess I mentioned that because people are like, don't fly to Guayaquil, Guayaquil's dangerous, go through Quito, don't go to Guayaquil. It's a good advice in general, but like if you're a tourist, you fly into Guayaquil, you're going to the coast, like most likely nothing's going to happen. It's actually relatively safe.
You think you mean it's good advice just in the sense that Guayaquil's dangerous, not good advice that you shouldn't fly into Guayaquil.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, Guayaquil's a little more dangerous, but most likely if you go to or through Guayaquil, you're not going to go to those dangerous, quote unquote, areas of Guayaquil. Right.
No, 100%. All right. So let's see. I want to jump into a couple of questions we had that have been forwarded to us. Well, let's just start with some easy stuff. So we got a question: who pays the realtor fee? Which we may or may not have covered. I'm for some reason I feel like we didn't, and so I just wanted to cover this. In general, in Ecuador, you don't really find buyer's agents. So in general, any agent you're working with in the country has in general has been contracted by the seller to sell his property. Sometimes there are other agents involved sort of on the buy side, and you get a split, of course, of the commission. But in general, that's how it works in Ecuador. And then another question related to that: what is a typical real estate percentage, and does seller pay all of the commission? So there's kind of two ways to answer that. So number one, in Ecuador, it's all over the map. You know, I've seen real estate people, which could be a taxi driver, could actually be a real estate company, could be anything in between those two, right? Work for as little as 1%, 2%, 3%. And I think Canada has a 3% standard, I believe. The US is more like 5 or 6 in general. But I've seen, you know, commissions as low as that, and I've seen commissions as high as 10%, or even what they call excelente, where folks basically try to sell a property for whatever they can get out of it and keep the margin. That was really a big problem. That's almost how everyone did it when I first got here. We were actually the first company in this region not working that way. And it was actually really difficult to convince sellers that, hey guys, we don't work that way. Like, you can't just give us a number and then we try to sell it for more. We work on a commission basis, which serves your needs better. So we're on, you know, anyway. So that's kind of the overall story. For us as a company, we generally receive 5 to 6%, depending on the property and the area and the price and so on and so forth. But we generally work at 5 to 6%. There are some exceptions where we get a little more, only if it's really far away. So if we're talking about stuff that's you know, many hours from where we are, and it's especially if it's very inexpensive, we do have a minimum commission that we receive. Outside of that, we work at 5 to 6% on, you know, 90+% of all properties we list. Yeah, and that's how we work. So. Yeah.
I would even say we have some properties at less than 5% as well.
Oh, that's true.
We'll have some 3-4% properties, sometimes in cities or more competitive areas and stuff like that. But yeah, overall, 98-99% of all of our properties are a percentage basis of 5 to 6%. That's typical. And then on top of that, if, for example, another agency is listing a property that we don't have listed, we can act as a buyer's agent as well, which we've done, and, you know, co-broked with other agents. And of course, split commissions 50-50. That's typical here as well. So we have very good relationships with all the other real estate companies in the area, and, you know, we work with them. We do have a lot more properties than almost everyone else, and better properties in general. But there's the occasional properties we don't have listed, so we will work with other agencies sometimes.
Yes, sir. So that kind of covers that. Was there anything else on there? I think there was something else I was thinking about related to commissions. Oh yeah. So one thing that I think is important to say. So, you know, when I got down here with a business partner, Carl was already here. When I got down here with a business partner, you know, 10.5, July 2013, you know, and we decided some months later to launch a real estate company in Loja. We were in Loja at the time. The company started in Loja. And, you know, kind of didn't know what we were up against in terms of how things are in this country. We were very ignorant at the time of life and culture and business and how to go about things here. Anyways, when we tried to do that, you know, one thing I wanted to mention related to that, right? So again, we get hired by sellers to sell properties, right? And so, you know, I've been down here since July 2013. We launched the business in January 2014. We've been in business since then. And, you know, what we figured out very early on, or was just sort of part of our strategy, part of our business model very early on, was, you know, the entire impetus is on protecting the buyer. That's literally the basis of our company, of our business. The reason that's the case is because folks are coming here from a foreign country. And of course, I'm not talking about the local business we do. We do a lot of business with locals. We have a lot of sales from local buyers. They know what they're doing. You know, they don't need anywhere near as much from us as a foreign buyer. They already know the area. They already know the prices. They already know how to buy and sell property. They understand the legalities. They understand the risks. So that's a much easier process for us, protecting their interests. than protecting, you know, a foreign buyer's interest. So I'm just going to talk about foreign buyers for a second. Folks are coming down from other parts of the world, generally speaking, don't speak the language, generally speaking, don't understand the culture, have expectations that are absolutely not in line with real estate here, right? So there's no title insurance in Ecuador. There's no escrow. We actually created an escrow company to be able to have that service to protect, you know, to further protect people's deposits. You know, the fiduciary responsibility in Ecuador is not what you would expect coming from, you know, the US or other places. That list goes on, right? So our job, our role is quite literally to oversee all of that and make sure that the buyer's interests are fully protected. And that includes price. You know, like we don't take on any properties that are out of line with the market. We understand the market very well. We've been here for years. There's no comps either. That's another thing. You know, full disclosure, the first probably 6 to 18 months I was in business, our properties were way overpriced. We didn't sell any of them, but our properties were way overpriced because we didn't know the market yet, right? People were coming to us and they're like, oh, these gringos, like, you know, they'll $500,000. We're like, well, yeah, this is great, you know, right? But literally, like, people were coming to us as foreigners. We were all set up. We had a nice office. We looked great. We're wearing suits. We got, you know, and they're coming to us with overpriced stuff that they thought, hey, maybe these guys, you know, can, right? So it took us a little while to learn the market. There's no comps. That was many, many years ago that we figured all that out. And so, yeah, so that I just want to be clear to people, like our role is to protect buyers because that's actually the way the market is here, right? Many things in Ecuador are for sale, and many more things in Ecuador are for sale than they would be in the US. And so, you know, it's really the buyer that kind of has the leverage in that way. And for us, you know, our role is we need people who come to this community, who come to this area from all over the world to be thrilled with, you know, with the process, with what's going on, with, you know, their interactions with us, with their property, etc. No, that doesn't mean we're 100% perfect. You know, there's always, it's a business. We've been in business for 10.5 years. We do the absolute best we can, and we adjust and we fix anything we could ever have screwed up. But that's just, you know, that's kind of the philosophy. That's how we run our business. So I just wanted to add that. Anything on that subject?
No, I think you captured it.
Yep.
Perfect.
But I think part of this too is this is still a buyer's market. I think it's important to point it out. Still at this point, you know, which means most properties have some level of negotiating room, which I would always tell my clients, buyers, you know, let's negotiate. Let's try to get you the best deal possible. Right? I think that's kind of our philosophy. We want the happy buyers and happy sellers, happy clients.
Yeah, and full transparency, and like we shoot people straight. I mean, if you ask us like on a property, hey, is there negotiation room? We're gonna tell you what we know. You know, we're gonna tell you what we know. In terms of, you know, what kind of perspective the seller has, and you know, all that stuff. So.
And the worst case scenario is the seller says no. You know, like that's it.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Time to enjoy. And listen, this person's probably a very nice person. I'm not talking any amount of, you know, crap personally. We have a very negative comment here that I think is actually worth breaking down.
Okay.
So some of the lies you tell people about Ecuador and how great it is to live here over the years is sad. I've been here several years and the people are so dishonest. I ran a survey among expats and not a damn one of them ever got their deposit back after leaving an apartment. That's funny. It's gonna be fun to address. Also, you cannot believe anything an Ecuadorian says unless there's money involved, as they never show up and everything is always someone else's fault. Even the immigrants from Venezuela don't like them. Obviously, you are the same and need to make a profit. Also, isn't your area where the crime is bad? Didn't several expats get murdered there? So, wow. He went all in.
Where are they from? Does it say?
I have no idea.
But they still sounds like they still live here.
It seems like it. Yeah.
I think they might be in Cuenca.
Okay, so they still like it enough to live to stay here.
Was in Quito.
They haven't left.
Might have been
Interesting, yeah. Different areas. I want to jump in the deposit thing. I mean, because that's kind of the main thing. Well, one of the main things here. Like they ran a survey and nobody got their deposit back, right? So that's something you hear for sure, right? Like you know, a landlord will let you rent and you gave a security deposit, and at the end they keep it. Usually they have a reason, like you messed up something, you broke something, there was some kind of issue. a strategy for that, what I've done, I've always gotten my deposit back. Or the strategy that I've always done,
you flex.
flex. Well, first of all, part of the flex, right, is like you want to be friendly and friend with your landlord. You want your landlord to like you as a person. You want them to think you're a great freaking tenant, that you pay your rent on time, that you take good care of stuff, that if there's an issue, you let them know, you fix stuff, you improve their property. Like, they like you, so they don't want to screw you up, I think. Personally, that has been my experience. And I've rented here for 12 years. Like,
so 8 seconds, literally. Relationships in Ecuador are everything. And that's an example of that. Continue.
Very much so. Yeah, like our landlord currently, we're in super good terms with him. He wants us to stay there. We pay the rent on time. We're always, on top of stuff. He's like, you guys could live there forever if you guys want. And we're getting a great deal on top of that. So yeah, the security deposit thing, if you're planning on moving out, of course, you let the landlord know a couple months in advance. And then the last month, you say, I'm going to use my security deposit towards the last month's rent. I've done that many times and it works.
You can do that.
What are they going to say? Well, okay, let me do a quick look through the house and make sure nothing broke or whatever. And then as long as that's cool, then you don't pay the rent the last month. You just use the security deposit towards the last month's rent. That's worked for me every time.
Yeah, I literally, second time I've rented. The first time I rented, I've rented twice prior to where I'm at now. And the first time, got my security deposit back. Second time, did that same thing, take my deposit for the last month's rent.
So we're two that wouldn't have voted the same thing on their survey.
Yeah, well, right, but it's actually, so, what did I say? You asked me these kinds of questions a while back, and I'm like, yeah, you're much less likely to get your deposit back here than you are back home. Like, no question, right? And so that goes into, like, this is everything in Ecuador. All life in Ecuador, right, goes into adjusting your expectations and learning how life is there, because it's different, right? So culturally here, you're literally expected to hand the place back in the exact same condition you received it, including paint, including what in the States would be just normal wear and tear, right? Like, you would never, no one would ever try to get you to pay for paint back home. Oh, look, there's scuff marks on the wall. You got to give me X amount for. No one would ever do that back home.
Yep.
Normal wear and tear, generally speaking, back home is just part of the, what every landlord or rental property owner understands as part of the model, the business. They're gonna have to do a little touch up and fix it. That's not the case here, right? So you're expected to give people the property back in as good or better shape than you received it. I totally fell into this trap, so the first place I rented in Vilcabamba, the lady's lovely, I'm friends with her to this day. They rent me the place, I'm moving out, I want my deposit, and they come in there inspecting the house as if, every little, and it wasn't even a very nice house, it was big and it worked in the area, but it wasn't really, it's Ecuador, and it wasn't a luxurious house at all. It had it's a little older, it was beat up a bit, right? They're inspecting every last thing, and they're trying to tell me, oh, this is $50, this is $30, this is $80, this is. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like, I was pissed, and I didn't speak Spanish at the time, so I'm the jerk, I'm that American, who's basically pissed in English. That's like a big regret of mine, was that interaction, right? Oh, but from where I come from, this is so out of line what they're doing, right? But here it's not. Right. Here that's the expectation. You're gonna leave it as you found it. So after, we worked it out. They gave me some of the deposit, kept some, but I was upset about it. Yeah. And then when I rented after that, I said, okay, now I'll just fix everything myself before I move out. So if there's a little nick here, a dent there, or this, that, I'll just fix it. And then I'll do it that way. What you guys mentioned, absolutely. That's another strategy that people use. But in general here, you can work that stuff out, but just understand, there's a different expectation.
Yes. And there's go ahead. Well, I was going to say a few things on top of that. One of which is that, just in general, this is probably not the case for all landlords, but, people here are on a tight budget. Like, if you gave them a $1,200 security deposit or however the amount, they might not even have it to give it back. They've already spent it on something else. So I think using the last month rent using the deposit towards the last month's rent, in their mind, they're like, okay, I don't have to spend any more money. He's going to stay there an extra month. It's not as big of a deal as giving back money that they could use for something else. So that's one thing. Another thing is very few people, and we've had different situations, but very few landlord. This also might have changed, but for most of the places we rented, there was no contracts.
Right.
It was just like, this is how much it is per rent. You pay the rent on the day you came in, and it was this kind of verbal handshake agreement. Everything goes well. Once again, building relationship with the landlord and all that stuff helps with that, with the building trust and them knowing stuff. But Ecuador does favor legally tenants way more than landlords. So like there's a bunch of things, but basically if a landlord want to evict you, they need to give you 90 days notice, and they need to have a good reason, like you haven't been paying the rent for many months. Plus, so like it's like some people that are, I would call them sketchy somewhat, but they'll basically stop paying the rent until they get evicted, and then they have 90 more days to leave, and they don't pay the rent then for 3 to 4 months. So that's
you've seen foreigners do that, or are you talking about, or Ecuador?
I actually have seen foreigners do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, an Ecuadorian would never do that. Like,
Right.
that's disgusting.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would say probably recommendable to have a contract,
Yeah.
especially if you're a landlord. Also, you're trying to rent out to someone. Having a contract will avoid you having those types of things, because it's all sort of under the legal framework. But if you don't have a contract, the 90-day thing is what legally.
Yeah, and what Carl's referring to on the 90 days is you have to be behind 3 months in order for the legal process to start
Right.
for eviction. So that's, yeah.
And I think you literally have 90 days to leave also. They have.
Well, then they have to start a whole process. I mean, it could take longer than that. It could be a long time before they go, because they have to go through the courts and
Yeah. So we don't recommend doing that.
No.
This would be a situation where your reputation would be done. Nobody would want to rent to you anymore. The local, whoever the landlord is, would spread your name. Nobody would want to rent to you, like I said. And then they might even try to like physically harm you to get you out or something.
Sure.
So not a good idea. But during COVID though, there was a time where the government actually told people they didn't have to pay rent.
Put a
for some months
moratorium or something.
because people they couldn't go to work basically. So that did happen. Anyways, you were going to say that.
No, I think another aspect of expectations is, the culture here, and we've talked about this on other podcasts, going to tiendas and shopping for things. It's kind of they expect you to barter. They expect you to negotiate. It's kind of built in a way. So, when you're at this end of the process, if you're moving from your rental, and I just went through this, where they have the list of things that they're charging you for, you could just say yes, or you can negotiate, right? And you can say, hey, this doesn't make sense, or, what about this? Like, for example, like you sat with me on this, and they had, the folks had some outdoor patio furniture, right? That's literally outside. They put it up. It's their furniture. They bought it. It's outside. It's got it's like the aluminum chairs with the cushions, the outdoor cushions you can wash and, can get wet. They're the purpose built for that, right?
Yep.
They left them outside. I've left them outside. We sat on them outside. You sat in them, and then because of the sun, some of the stripes faded a little, right? Mm. And they said that I need to replace them. And I was, and so I'm negotiating with Jesse, saying like, dude, they're meant to be outside. They're outside. We're not doing that. And but the thing was, they're going to ask, and then they negotiated, and then we ended up settling on in the middle on, what was an expense and what wasn't. And they were open to that. And it almost looked like he was kind of happy that, he got, it was like
something.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
It's a psychological thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they understand that the relationship matters,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of the thing I want to address, because like, this is true anywhere in the world, of course, to some degree. It's amplified and magnified here by orders of magnitude. Your relation, that as well. Your reputation here is everything. It's your lifeblood. It's literally the thing that you need to care about the most. Is how you treat people, how you build relationships, and what locals, of course, I'm talking about, what locals think about you. This matters here more than anything else. The relationships here are how you get everything done in your life. So it's well within it's in your interest to not act like a jerk with anybody here at all. And if someone acts like a jerk with you,
right,
all right, you're good. You don't have to do any more business with them. You don't have to do anything with them. You can feel a way about it if you want, but don't yell at them.
Right.
Don't scream at them. Don't go around telling people how horrible they are. Like, just just chill out, because you need that here. Like, you actually need that. You need people to understand that you're a good dude or lady, and and that
You're trustworthy.
you're trustworthy and all those things.
And I explain a little bit about that, because a big reason for that is not only the underlying, pinnings of the Ecuadorian culture, but particularly in our region and in our area where we live. It's such a small town. It's not a big city where you don't know everybody.
Yep.
It's everybody knows each other here. The locals all know each other. Their family knows everybody. So when if you degrade a local, or you humiliate them, or you're angry with them, the entire village finds out, and that's kind of
No, that's where people start having problems, and they start making comments like this. They start getting upset at Ecuadorians, and they're all this, they're all that.
Yeah.
No, bro, it's just they don't like you.
Right.
Yeah.
They've decided you're a jerk.
Right.
That's what's happened, right?
Yeah, they could be that. I mean, we don't know this person or their background and stuff. And in all fairness, like, I could understand someone renting an apartment and then saying you don't get your deposit back and being like, oh, what's that? Like, that's dishonest, right? They're just trying to rob me. And these things do go on to some extent, right? And like I said, there's some reasons for these things. Potentially, the person, the landlord doesn't have the money to give you back. Like, they literally they spent it on something else. They have a fixed income, and they don't have this extra, they had anyway. So that could be a reason, right? And if you're not gonna try to argue to get your deposit back in a wise way, then maybe you won't get it back, right? In certain situations.
Sure, absolutely.
So that can happen, right? So, like, and Cuenca's different than Vilcabamba.
And
also,
Quito, right? That's the
Quito
point,
or
right?
whatever.
Like, we're giving experience for our local market, our village, the village we live in, the small town. It's going to be different in Quito. It's going to be different in Machao. It's going to be different in Guayaquil. It's going to be different. So you might have a different experience than we're having in some places. It seems to, the folks that I've talked to, the expats that have lived or visited or rented in rural areas of Ecuador, I get a lot of similarities to our way of life here and the way the Ecuadorians treat expats there. I've heard that more. Like, the more negative stories like this I've heard from Cuenca, from Quito, from Guayaquil, but we've heard plenty of good stories from those places as well. So I don't know.
Yeah, but the culture is not going to be. It is different. But you'd have to be here years to understand the differences in culture between this city and that town, and this city and that city. Mm-hmm. In general, like, there's a lot of similarities. Communication style is going to be similar. Expectations, thought processes are going to be similar. The only maybe exceptions to that would be like Guayaquil and maybe Quito, because those are sort of, they've adopted a lot of international practices, kind of in general and stuff. Yeah.
The difference between the coast and the Andes Mountains, the Cordillera.
Mm-hmm.
We should bring an Ecuadorian on the podcast to explain the difference, because the Ecuadorians will tell you there's a huge difference between the coastal culture and the mountain culture, right?
Right, but a huge difference, like, if you're here and you understand it.
Sure,
but if you're coming from somewhere else, there's going to be more similarities than differences.
Yeah, you know that.
So, okay, the other part, the next thing here, you cannot believe anything an Ecuadorian says unless there's money involved, as they never show up, and everything is always someone else's fault. So again, right, kind of to your point, you can totally understand how someone could believe this.
Yep.
And in my opinion, it's patently false, right? So in general, my perspective, everyone has their own, of course, but my perspective in general, Ecuadorians are, like, uniquely honest. Like, they tend to be very, very honest. That being said, the communication style is so different that you could easily interpret the way that whole thing works as dishonest, right? So I've shared this on the pod many times. I'll share it again now. What we joke about as the Ecuadorian no, right? So you ask somebody, hey, can you come to my house and do X, Y, and Z on Friday? And they're like, yeah, that's no. Like, that's no. They're telling you yes, unenthusiastically, which means no. Yeah. That's no. Like, that's a hard no. That's like absolutely not.
So
like,
funny.
under no circumstances is that person going to show up. Took me a while to figure this out, right? so you feel like, oh my, wow, this person, they told me, they lied to me, they said they were going to show up, they didn't. And then you call them and either they don't answer or they're like, yeah, okay, sure, I'm gonna be there, and they just don't show up. But they told you no, you just didn't know it, right? You just didn't know that they told you.
That's a bit of an extreme example. Like, I think, well, but I hear you, because that's happened to me many times. But I think if you get the Ecuadorian no, you kind of have to continue with like, okay, so 9 a.m. on Saturday morning, I'll meet you right there. And like, you really get to them to say, and then they might say like, hey, you know what, I can't do it Saturday. We got a baptism for my nephew or something, right?
Well, now you're getting to yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you just ask like, yeah, how about like next week? Yeah, sure. And then you don't follow up, then it's not going to happen, right? You have to get to the point where they actually commit to something. So yeah, that's just, a little nuance there.
No, absolutely. And like, these are the cultural differences that can get you all screwed up. Right. If you're reactive, or if you take things personally, or if you think, whatever you think, right? But this person, whoever, has decided that's dishonesty, which I can understand, but it's not, it's not. It's just a different communication style, different culture.
Right. Part of the culture, this was explained to me by an Ecuadorian. Ecuadorians, the mestizos, there was a really big class system here, where there was the Spaniards that owned everything. They were the owners of the haciendas. They were the wealthy people. And then there was the mestizo and the indigenous. Mestizos were like Spanish mixed with local indigenous people, and then the indigenous people who just remained sort of, segregated or secluded in their cultural things. But the Spaniards were the owners and the bosses, and then everyone else was like a working class.
Yeah.
And so, you get in trouble as a worker if you make a mistake, right? Or like there's this wanting to please the master, quote unquote. And I think that's remained a little bit in the culture. So
I agree.
If someone messes up, they make a mistake, they might not want to admit it right away, because like they're now in trouble. Now they've been demonstrated they did something wrong. So like, no, it wasn't me. It was the guy before. He made a mistake, and I just, and they won't take responsibility necessarily, because this is sort of what was being asked here. So I think that's also part of like, but I've had experiences where I would point out someone that made a mistake. They're like, no, there was already something. And then I try to get down to the bottom, and they're like, yeah, I did mess up right here, And eventually they admit that they did it wrong. But I think the first thing is like, no, it's not me. Like, don't be mad at me. And then eventually they'll admit it. And it's 100%. Kind of human nature also, right? But yeah, I think it's more in the culture here, because 100 years ago or less, it was more like that, right?
Absolutely.
Was it this reform in like the 60s or something?
Yeah, I mean, I would.
The 60s.
Yeah, I'm not a good enough historian on that, but I agree completely. In the U.S., for example, right, like we had actual slavery,
right,
which then was abolished, and then we had everything that happened after that. And despite all those gyrations, essentially you had a really large degree of freedom and of sort of equality in opportunity. Like people could open a business, or they could, they could operate in society as anyone else could, for a long time, right? In the U.S., Ecuador and much of Latin America never had slavery, like actual slavery, but they had sort of, like, I don't know what the word would be in English, like chattel or something, sort of like where folks work on the land.
Sure.
And when that land changes ownership, the people go with it, right? The people are now the workers for the new owner.
That's when Spain conquered. Is that what you're talking about, that whole?
But yeah, but I'm saying that lasted up until not very long ago at all, right? Like way past, 100 years past U.S. or more. Right. So I mean, I think even, and don't quote me on the timelines here, but I think that was going on still 60s, 70s, 80s even, where you've had not very many landowners who kind of own everything, and you've got the workers who kind of live there. It's sort of like what went on in Europe, with sort of indentured servitude almost, something like that. But it wasn't a legal thing. It was just, what else are you going to do kind of thing, right?
And
so
it probably explains a little bit about why the rental market is what it is if you just had a few big landowners that were renting or having this version of, workers, inhabit their land. And just recently you're seeing other classes of Ecuadorians get into like rental real estate as an investment, as that's kind of like a newer phenomenon.
Totally.
Yes,
totally.
I would say so.
So it's not been like, it's not comparable to the maturity of the market in the United States or in Canada or in Europe and other places. So it kind of explains like why some of the things that we think, oh, this makes sense. Why aren't they they just don't know. They're at a much, newer phase of development,
For sure. That's
maturity in rent and real estate.
Sure. I mean, aren't you the first tenant for this house?
I am.
It's just an example, but like some of these, landlords, they might be like you're the first tenant. Like they're just learning kind of the business. Because like 12 years ago, nobody signed a contract for a rental. This was so uncommon. Like nobody would even talk about this. Now I think it's kind of become more normalized, right? I think it's
Absolutely.
definitely.
And we're talking about our area, right?
Our
Again,
area,
like
yes. The
you know,
cities might be
Quito,
different.
Guayaquil, Cuenca
right.
probably as well.
Just real quick on
Mhm.
that, I think if I'm not mistaken, there was some kind of reforma agraria or
It
whatever.
happened twice.
Happened twice.
The
okay.
second one was under Correa. I don't know when the first one was. We could look it up.
There was a first one, which my understanding is that when so like you said, well, Vilcabamba I think had four families that owned all of Vilcabamba.
Something
basically.
like that, yeah.
Something like that. And then when they did this reforma, all of a sudden every worker who lived somewhere who can demonstrate, they could prove they had lived in that house for a certain amount of time, that they're farming around it, all of a sudden owned that land.
Right.
They were given that land by the government.
A little piece, basically.
A portion of it,
yeah. A portion.
So then all of a sudden, all these workers that didn't own anything became owners. Yeah, that's I think it was in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and
maybe
then the
early
second
70s.
one was recently. Like Correa was in power from 06 to 16. So there was another one during his time.
Okay.
Another land reform that went on where they did that again, where they sort of, no, you have to give your workers some land.
Okay. Yeah.
So that sure sways political, political opinions if you do something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why we hear mix. Like we hear some folks that really loved Correa, and we hear some folks, Ecuadorians, that didn't like what Correa did.
And to frame it basically, you might disagree. I don't know. I'm curious, but the poor or poorer class, or the lower class, they love Correa because they all of a sudden became owners of land, right, and stuff like that, right?
Has more support, I would say. I'd say that's accurate. I mean, I'd say that's
and the
an
business class,
exaggeration, but
typically the
accurate.
business class or the upper class don't want not
I mean, that's
communist, but
the
socialist
same left-right
ideology.
kind of split everywhere in the world, basically.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, but there was one other thing.
Well,
here.
just let's address the last part.
And I just want to thank this commenter. Like we're having a whole episode about their comment.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, just the last part about tourists or expats getting murdered in Vilcabamba.
Well, we definitely need to go.
Yeah, let's hit that now because there was a tragic event, that didn't happen in Vilcabamba where a foreigner, Francesca Williams, was murdered in her home, and that was that rocked the community. That rocked everyone, right? That was it was almost a surreal thing to hear about and to experience people talking about, and it really hit home. And the reports of that were that it was in Vilcabamba. The reality is that it wasn't in Vilcabamba.
Right.
It was what, just outside of Malacatos, over an hour from Vilcabamba.
Yeah.
Is that about?
I think it was like an hour from the main highway, which is in Rumishitana. So like it was quite far away from here.
Between here and Loja, but far into the mountain.
Yeah.
That's the like time.
If it's an hour from Rumishitana, that's like an hour and 20. That's like that's an hour and a half almost. Hour and 20 minutes.
It was quite out there. But she was a major part. Her family, they were a major part of the Vilcabamba community and the activities and the family things. So they were,
and it was certainly in the region.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, so to my knowledge, I believe this is accurate. Since 2010 or 11, there's been 2 expats that were murdered.
I think there might have been a third one.
Oh, okay. So who's the third?
Some Italian photographer somewhere outside Malacatos.
Oh, I heard something about that. Did he actually? Okay, he died. I wasn't sure because I know I heard about that incident. I didn't know that he had died.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was another one.
Okay, so perhaps 3.
I don't think. Sound to me like nobody really knew him, or like there was not a lot of information about it. But that was while we were here for sure.
Yeah. So I got here in 2013. There was a guy, Glenn, a Canadian, who was murdered prior to my arrival. I don't remember what year, like 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there.
Yep.
And then Francesca's the only one I know about. Yep. There may be this third that you just mentioned, but I mean, that's the extent of it.
The fact that
12 years, basically.
Yeah.
That it's that infrequent that we know
14 years.
We know them all.
Right.
Like, you
Well,
know
I
them
would-
all. Like,
Yeah.
what small town do you know all of those? You know, if you're next to it too, how big is Loja?
It's like 250,000 people.
Quarter
something like
million
that,
people.
yeah.
You're 45 minutes from a 250,000 people, and you know how many. Yeah, I don't know. It's just,
Yeah.
it's tragic regardless, obviously,
course,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But the fact that it's so infrequent, it says something about the community. It says something
Right.
about the region.
And I mean, the fact that there is this idea that expats are getting murdered left and right in Vilcabamba, like this person believes that, it sounds like.
Right.
That's just false. Like, that's
Right.
not true. Now, of course, it happened 3 times in the last 12, 14 years, whatever. It's unfortunate. It's extremely tragic. Like, we knew Francesca personally.
Yeah.
Like, this
Yeah.
this hit really close to home. I mean, we went to her funerals. We knew her husband, her children and stuff. We've been part of different groups with them and stuff like that. Like, this is a serious thing, you know. But yeah, once again, all the circumstances of that are kind of very strange. Like, nobody really understands why, or there's
a
no
lot of
logic to
rumors,
it.
yeah.
There's like like there's not even a robbery involved with it and stuff. But yeah, no, I mean, that's extremely awful and sad as can be. But it's not like it's something that happens all the time here at all, you know.
And I just want to go back for a second to sort of the relationship reputation stuff. Loja's I think at that time it was like 180,000 people or something when I first moved there. You know, me and Darnell opened our business. The entire city knew who we were within a few months.
Mhm.
And so anything you do, everyone talks about it, even in a city that size. So the amount of doors that can open for you here, if you leverage that, like if you're just a good guy and you just treat people well and you are a stand-up person and you follow through and you know, all that stuff, everyone knows before they meet you already who you are. So they've already asked, they've gotten the feedback.
Yep.
And what that did for us in Loja was it put us into meetings and into rooms and into circles that we had no business being in
Sure.
based on what we had actually done here.
Yep.
It was just, word had gone out. Hey, there's these 2 guys, there's foreigners, they started a real estate company, you can trust them, right? They're good. They whatever the word was that went out. And so now if we want a meeting with a bank president, if we want a meeting with a politician, if we want a meeting with, you know, the highest level X, Y, or Z, we could get it no problem because they were curious. They wanted to know who we were. They had heard good things about us. And that's just how it works here.
Mhm.
So I just kind of wanted to drive that home. Did you have something?
Yeah, well, just with the, you know, the question about the murders in Vilcabamba and that, there was just some recent dialogue from the interior minister, and there was I forget, some lieutenant or general of the Ecuadorian police, and they were saying in the speech they gave, they talked about that 91% is their most recent estimate of 91% of the murders in Ecuador. Again, that's not this area. They were just speaking of Ecuador in general, but 91% of those murders were related to criminal gangs or the criminal drug trade. 91%.
Of course. Yeah.
Like that's such a large percentage, you know, of those. And then when you look at where the violent crime and the murders are happening geographically, they're condensed and they're concentrated in certain areas of the country. And then when you have them concentrated, and then a concentration of that concentration is related to the criminal drug trade and gangs, like
It's a great point.
it's just something to consider.
Mm-hmm.
So last week, I think it was the week before, probably 2 weeks ago, I am at the office, which I'm not at the office a ton, right? So I try to spend a little time when I can at the office, interact with folks, and, you know, enjoy the juice factory next door. And
Let's be honest.
Drink
that's
15
really
or
for the
20
juice
coconuts
factory. Drink 15 or 20 coconuts
a
a
day
day.
and pee every 5 minutes from drinking so much coconut
Yeah,
water.
I drink a lot of coconuts and pee a lot. There's no question. No, but so I'm at the office a couple of weeks ago, and I hear sort of an unusual noise outside.
Could you tell us what it sounded like?
Well, there was some yelling that
Was
I
it like,
didn't.
"Wah!"
No. But I just heard like a voice much louder than you would normally hear,
Okay.
and I heard a banging, like a, you know, like a thump thump. So I walk outside. Now hold on, actually, I have to preface. So we're gonna joke around here now, and we're gonna talk about an incident that took place in Vilcabamba. I have no idea the truth behind, what the guy was thinking, what the motive, what actually took place. We don't know. We were not involved. This is in no way intended to be an attack on the individual at all. This is in no way intended to even be negative about, anyone involved. It was just something we experienced. It did have some humorous aspects. It also had some aspects that were very revealing of the culture here and police and the way that whole thing works.
That was the most interesting thing for me.
As me as well.
Right. All right. Let me take that back. Right. That was probably the most interesting thing you ever, when you explain it, like you can't make this up.
You cannot make this
cannot
up.
write, you cannot think of like, I'm going to write a movie script, like the most outrageous thing I can think of and write a script and think of this, but it's actually happened. But the most interesting thing from like a human community perspective was the police reaction.
The way they handled it.
No, it was beautiful. Yeah.
So this guy, so I go outside to see what's going on. And there's an Asian man who has dismounted, I believe he was dismounted at that point, from a horse, which is not uncommon to see a horse around town, like that happens, but who had dismounted from a horse. He's got like a 10 to 12 foot spear.
Wait, what was he dressed in? Like,
hold on.
okay.
What looked like a samurai sword. Yeah. Some other accoutrements. You like that vocabulary? Some other accoutrements.
Can you define that for our guests?
It's like accessories, basically. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's not too bad. On his sort of like belt, like almost, police style sort of like tool belt.
Okay.
He's got a full-on shield. He's got what appears to be a bulletproof vest. It may not have been, but that's what it looked like. He's dressed in a sort of black security-looking, military-looking, like what you'd see Black Rock guys.
It was I thought it was like fatigue, Army.
Like fatigue.
Yeah, camouflage.
Was it camouflage?
Yeah, green camouflage.
It was camouflage.
Color,
Oh, okay.
The shield was black, and there was some black items,
black, right.
but the
all right.
the whole
I'm sure you guys are right. I'm gonna have to look it up.
It was
in a
like
minute,
full military fatigue.
Yeah, it looked like it was like full military, right? So he's out
with a helmet,
with a
face mask,
face mask, helmet, the whole nine. I mean, he really looked the part. I actually believe he is the part. I don't know, like, again, I don't know this person. I don't mean any disrespect to this person, but he looked the part for sure. Mm-hmm. And he's off the horse and he's shouting and he's sort of banging the butt end of his spear. And I go out and I start filming. I don't know if they're shooting a movie, if there's some kind of...
Right, no, that's how outrageous.
Yeah, there's something, we've never seen. Like, I'm 41 years old. I lived in New York City for like 15 years. I've never seen anything... There's a lot of wild stuff you see in New York just living there. I've never seen anything remotely close to this situation that unfolded. So I go out, I start to video because this is just such an interesting thing taking place. He ends up sort of a block down past the office. I go do something else and I hear this commotion a block down. So half the town, that's an exaggeration, half the town sort of walks down to see what's...
By that time I was there.
By that time you're there. Yeah. Walks down, and then over the course of, I have the timestamps on my phone, over the course of the next hour and 20 minutes, this sort of dance takes place between this gentleman, his girlfriend or wife, this guy who apparently owes him $25, who lives on the second floor of this restaurant, the police, and to some degree, Carl, who's basically translating for, for the police. Yeah. So Carl's, his wife shows up at one point. There's kids there. Carl has young children. There's kids there. I'm telling Roxy, Roxy, like, this might not end well. You probably should get the kids out of here. But yeah, so I'll let you guys jump in. But the there was a horse chase at one point.
The guy was like,
yeah, we'll get to all that. Yeah, but the thing. But I want to let you guys. Carl was really. We were both there, but I'll let Carl explain some of that. But the thing for me that was just so incredible, like the punchline for me, the conclusion for me was, this guy threatened the police with real weapons for over an hour, charged them a couple of times. Really, like, I was concerned for the police, that he could actually, take that sword, and because his sword is out, his spear, the whole thing. And no shots were fired. They never, the main cop who was dealing with it, a very large guy, had no gun. he had a couple of cops behind him. The cops didn't even show up for, took a few minutes for them to get here. Then one showed up, then a second, then a third, then a fourth. The fourth probably was 30 minutes before the fourth got there. No more ever showed up. So it's not like we got 80, 120 cops dealing with this thing like you'd have back home.
Right? 3 or 4?
Four. It ended with four, yeah. And these guys dealt with it for an hour and 20 minutes and eventually subdued him and arrested him. But it was a remarkable display of patience. Of control, of self-control. And it was, to me, it just really speaks to life here in that way, right? This is how police are in general here. This is how, it's not this sort of like, this is the rules and this is the law and we're here to enforce it. And if you screw with us at all, watch out. That's not the...
If this event would have happened in New York
or
Chicago,
it
would have been over. It would have been over.
And they would have been fully justified and no one would have been like, oh, that's messed up at all.
He was literally charging police officers with a spear and with a sword behind a shield. And the police officers had their guns drawn and they didn't put it in him. They didn't, it's just like, this would have had a way worse outcome anywhere else I've lived.
Oh, yeah. We were genuinely concerned about him. That's why I stepped in at that point. They were shouting, so the backstory, according to all sources, but according to them directly, the samurai and his girlfriend, is that they had purchased an item from an Ecuadorian guy. The guy didn't give him what they wanted. They wanted their money back, and the guy refused to give them their money back. So they came and tried to get their money, basically. They went to his house and they tried to break down the door. Unfortunately, they broke down the wrong door. And so they broke down a restaurant door that's right below the guy's house.
Down the door.
Well, they didn't break the door, but they broke the door, but they didn't break it down. They speared the door in a few.
Sort of like they had this metal grate in what would be windows.
I think it was like a plasticky type of window.
Well, no, I actually went the next day when they had put it back and it was metal.
Okay.
And it had stab wounds in it. That
No, I saw it. I didn't think it was metal. So he, the samurai, we'll call him the samurai, stabbed the door 3 or 4 times. The restaurant called the police. Police comes, and there's this shouting battle between the samurai, his girlfriend, and the gentleman who owes them allegedly $25. And they're saying, you need to give us our money back. We're coming here to collect our money. And the police is like mediating the situation, like between them. They're not even trying to arrest the guy at first. They're just trying to like resolve the personal, issue that they had between them. So the guy's like, I bought this thing for them here, and he threw it down from the balcony. They're like, we don't want your crap. It's old. We don't want to buy that. Just give us our money back. And this whole thing is happening for a while. But then the police keeps going back to, you guys just broke someone else's door. You got to fix that. Like, that's the issue here. Like, we'll let you guys go home, peacefully, as long as you fix the door that you broke. And so this whole thing goes down for a long time. But I went, I spoke to the police. I'm like, what do you guys want? What's the situation? And he said, go talk to them, because they don't seem to understand us well, even though they spoke some Spanish, but I think they spoke better English.
Yeah.
And tell them, like, if they don't stop, we'll have to shoot him down. Like, he's got a lethal weapon, and he's threatening the peace here. Like, we'll have to actually use our firearms against him. So I go to them and say, hey guys, listen, they're telling me like they're gonna, attack you if you don't stop what you're doing. You're, creating a commotion here, and I don't want you guys to get hurt. I know you guys want to go home peacefully, right? Why don't you just drop it, and they'll, resolve your issue, your $25 issue later, but this is probably not the time and place to do this. And then his girlfriend was like, yeah, you're right, yeah, yeah, he's right. Like, let's, and he was like, no, the samurai guy was, I think it felt to me like it was his honor that was at play or something. And he was in this situation, and he was in this, warrior mode. Potentially he's in some ex-military, according to this news article, and they might be wrong because this is Ecuador, social media news, but he was of Chinese origin. You didn't think he was Chinese, but they definitely spoke an Asian language from being there with each other. And this whole thing went down for a while, but yeah, what surprised me was, of course, how the police reacted, but also how the samurai didn't want to let it go. He was he was ready to put up a fight with them.
Oh yeah, he did.
No, for real. And
It's just such an outrageous conversation. The samurai didn't want to give up against the police with guns.
With guns.
What?
And the police, you know, for a good half an hour or more, there's 2 police, guns drawn, standing about 30, 40 feet away from the guy, just ready in case. And there was one moment in particular, you could argue 2 moments, where I was sure they were about to gun him down.
Yeah.
You know,
Why would you say?
so he charged. The cops
like this? Jesse Bear, surrender or pay the price.
First he had a spear. Eventually he drew his
sword.
And that's part of the thing too. It's still a mystery to me, like, because they got the spear first, so it sounded like
Right.
he dropped off his spear to get his sword.
Something.
Oh, and they grabbed the spear.
They grabbed the spear from him.
Right. The big cop at some point got this.
And then eventually they got his, like they
no,
didn't
the
arrest
sword.
him.
I saw how they got
You
the
did?
sword.
Okay, how did that happen?
So that was after it moved to the next
Yes,
block.
Yes.
So at some point, like you said, the cops were, again, the restraint was incredible, but they were just trying to resolve
Yes.
the situation.
The
At
dispute.
least that's what they were saying.
Yes.
Right. So
Well, their acts showed it, right?
Yeah,
They didn't
yeah.
light them up.
no, but
Yeah,
they
but they
kept
did
saying
arrest him eventually.
like, hey, you can just go home.
Right.
Right. And that, so I think it was just a tactic. You know, I don't think they were actually going to let him just go home, but they were saying that, and it seemed like they were serious.
Sure.
But anyways, at some
De-escalation.
de-escalation,
Right.
like hardcore de-escalation.
Which you don't see a lot. You're seeing more of that being trained. I have a lot of friends that are police in the States. You're seeing more of that being trained into new recruits into policing, but you don't see it in act. Like you watch social media and you see police interactions with people filming, and it's almost like there's a point where it's de-escalation and then it's like a switch flips,
Right.
you know, and you're like, whoa, okay. you know.
And we hit that point several times.
Oh,
That's what
beyond,
was so amazing.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
Right.
So it ends up like they switch. The cops kind of let him leave, which is good, right?
Mhm.
It's again the de-escalation, and it ends. They go 1 block up,
Yeah.
and then the movie continues, and the crowd, migrates up a block, where there's a horse chase and all. But the way they got the sword was when he got on the horse and started galloping away
Yeah.
in the opposite direction where we were. The girlfriend or the wife had the sword in a holster.
Okay.
Actually, a video of it. We videoed the whole thing. And this guy, one of the police, kind of came up from behind her and just reached and just took it.
Oh, okay.
And that's how. And so at that point, he didn't have the spear or the sword.
Right.
And then
the shield.
And then he still had the shield.
I saw
believe,
the
at that
police
point.
chase. Though.
Right,
That
so
was wild.
Yeah,
That
so
was
the,
like
so the
that
police
epic
car,
moment.
I think it was the large cop that
Yeah,
sort of handled the
driving.
whole thing. Jumps in the cop car, which there's only one. The rest
Wait,
were
he ran on
motorcycles.
foot or he jumped back on the horse?
No, the guy's on the horse
guy's on the
galloping
horse
away.
running.
Trying to run away.
The horse,
okay.
the cop jumps in the car.
Where's the wife?
She's just kind of
She's-
hanging
okay.
out at this
He's
point.
on the horse trying to get out.
But
of
they
town.
never arrested her, which also
didn't
is
arrest her,
hilarious
right.
because she was involved. Like
Right.
in the States, she would have gotten arrested for
Right,
sure.
Right. It's true.
But the cop jumps in the car, chases him down just on this 1 block.
Mhm.
It's a dirt road block just on the outskirts of town. Chases him down the road, gets in front of him and and scares the horse back the other way.
Yeah, so the horse turns
So the
around,
horse
goes-
and stops and turns around and starts galloping back towards us. The cop then is behind the horse coming back towards
Oh, man.
us. Yeah, it was wild. I
But
mean, it-
but because I took some videos of that. I remember the samurai being off the horse, running away
Yeah.
from the police car. Did he jump off his horse?
yeah, we'll have to check the video.
Yeah.
But at some point when the cop scared the horse back this way, he got off. I don't know exactly when that was. And then, ends up on foot, and then it ended 5-10 minutes after
Yeah.
that.
Eventually, there were 3 or 4 police officers. They kind of pinned him to a wall, put him under handcuff, and they weren't punching him or
Not at
beating
all.
him.
No.
I even heard the one police guy, I think of the Vilcabamba police, the bigger guy, he was like, "You can't do this stuff. Can't do this here."
Right, what are you doing?
No, he said something like, "Stop with the violence."
He said
Stop
that
with the
several
violence,"
times. He was
multiple times.
shouting that, yeah.
Deja con la violencia, something along those
Yeah.
lines. So
Baja la
teaching him,
violencia.
hey, bro, don't do this kind of violent shit here.
Right,
Right, this
right.
isn't solving your problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
yeah, trying to teach him the situation, the lesson or something.
I mean, at some point, so Carl's. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, and then what I found even more amazing, after the guy's in handcuffs, I think his girlfriend went in the police car with him. They were driving to
Yeah,
the police
I guess
station.
so.
They stopped by the house of the guy who allegedly owed them money. The police officer asked the guy, come down. The guy didn't come down. The police kicked the door down, went upstairs and got him, the other party who, in this situation was not guilty
No,
of anything,
no.
right? I mean, he could have owed them money, but that's separate. Like he wasn't like
Right.
committing a crime in that
You're not
moment,
going to
right?
jail for owing someone
And
25
forced the
bucks.
guy to also come to the police station
Yeah.
to continue to mediate this dispute that they had. So, I mean, the whole thing was wild.
No, and so right. I mean, so just again, and we'll put some footage
Yes.
in while we're talking, but like some of what was so interesting only in the sense that people would be surprised. I've been here long enough to see enough of these situations. I've literally seen fist fights between cops and citizens that didn't end in arrest. I've literally in Loja. I've literally seen that. So this is not. It's different here. Now, again, would that take place in Quito or Guayaquil? I have no idea.
And
Maybe not.
Another aspect of this, real quick, we're right now in this estado de excepción.
Oh, right.
The police has full range to shoot whoever they want.
That's right.
If someone's doing something like this, like they could have shot him and have
No
some kind of
consequences.
immunity,
Yeah.
right? And they didn't.
No,
So
that's a great point.
So to
Carl.
me,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, they're humans. First of all, I don't think any of them want to shoot anyone.
No.
Right? They don't want to have that on their conscience. But also, like, they thought it was better to try to resolve it not in this way. Like, nobody wanted to have a killing happen in town, but they would have been protected by the law if they did, under Ecuadorian law.
That's a great point, because we've been getting a lot of comments about the state of exception in the police state, the military influence, and the power that police have, and it is a slippery slope. We've talked about that in the past, but this is a great example of, hey, they had the power and they didn't abuse it, and they still, at least in our region, it was a really beneficial outcome.
And those cops are not from our region. They get transferred around, and the group here now is not, they're from wherever they're from. But, I mean, at one point, right, so you're in the middle of this for a good chunk of it. There was an elderly lady who may have been the lady who washes clothes next to the horse, the place that rents horses, that Maria del Cisne was out there talking to them. Her father rents the horses.
That's right.
People are like, a foot away from these folks having conversations during this whole thing as well, which again would have been highly unusual. At one point, the cops trying to get the elderly woman out of there. These are all Ecuadorians. These are all locals, folks in town. But yeah, really, really unique situation. And then, so then the next day, it was the next day. So I'm hanging out at the office again, and then I see a police car drive by, and it's the two of the four cops who were there. I hop out of the office because I just wanted to thank them basically. And I hop out of the office, and they're about to make the left at the corner where our office is. I see them, I give a little wave, and I'm just like, hey guys, and obviously in Spanish, but I'm just like, hey guys, thank you so much. That was amazing. The patience you guys showed was remarkable. The restraint, you guys did an incredible job. Just kind of giving them kudos, because I actually did. It really was amazing how they handled the whole thing. That their lives, at least the big guy's life was in danger a little bit at a couple of times, right? So they really handled this remarkably well. And the cop, they're thanking me, and and it's funny actually. Since then, they've been waving to me every time they see me. But they're thanking me, and then they said they're like, the guy's already out. They're like, the guy, he's out already. I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, he's already out. I'm like, really? And they kind of made a derogatory comment about the prosecutors, and we sort of ended the conversation, but it was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I was there. I saw their faces very close up. These guys were maybe 30 years old. They were young.
Yeah.
The cops?
Sorry, the samurai, his girlfriend.
Yeah.
They were a young couple. They weren't too old. At least they looked very young to me. And they just wanted their money back. I felt bad for them to be in that situation. I mean, you have to not be thinking a little bit to go and do that in broad daylight one day dressed as military samurai. Just that in itself, impersonating a military person. He looked like a military guy with a samurai sword, which is a arma blanca, a lethal weapon. But I felt bad for them because I was like, yeah, they just, you know, they feel like they got screwed up. They just want to get their money back. Like they're not really trying to harm anybody. Really, they're just trying to get their, you know, so they might not have a lot of money or something along those lines. And yeah, they seem very young, kind of innocent to me, you know.
Oh, you guys are right. It was more like camouflage.
Yeah. No, he looks like a full on
Once in a while.
special force military.
You know,
Like
it'd be interesting.
I think his gear's legit also.
Yeah,
It looked like
he looked like he was ready to get some bullets, and he thought his shield would protect him. Like this was a legit
it'd
bullet.
be interesting if we could actually talk to him.
We should
I'm
interview him.
curious to find out.
Bring
No,
him on
like
the
just
show.
to hear his story. Like, okay, what happened? What, you know?
No,
what-
it would be fun.
Yes.
I'd be curious to know.
Let's do it.
There's a story there. You know, if we
I
can.
think we
find
can.
out.
We heard that he's offering martial arts lessons now.
Right. So yeah. So we'll see how all this plays out. The rumor, and again, I don't know if any of this is true. The rumor is that they live in Cuenca or living in
Lived
Cuenca.
Cuenca at one point.
Some people that I know apparently were on the bus with them coming here,
Okay.
and they were dressed like this then.
Mhm.
Yes.
And then I've also seen the girlfriend since then, or the wife,
Yes.
also dressed still in sort of fatigues.
Yep. Every time I've seen her, she's
Yeah.
been like that.
So,
Just
yeah.
grabbing groceries, dressed like that. So maybe that's just their style
Yeah.
of dress.
I'd love to have him on our show.
Right. All right. Well, maybe we'll do an interview or have him, guest on the pod. If you guys want to see the samurai,
He's famous now.
the famous samurai, Vilcabamba samurai on the show or an interview, type samurai down below in the comments and we'll see if we can work some magic and get him on the show.
We'll put this in the link down below as well. But the footage that I took, I sent it to a few people who sent it to other people, and it made it to some local Loja Media channel, and they edited it, and it has 1.9 million
It's like 2
views
million
as of
No,
today.
no kidding.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
all from my phone.
Oh,
The
wow.
footage that I took.
Wow.
Yeah, it's wild. So we'll put that in the link as well.
And if
down
you
below.
guys are interested in Ecuadorian katanas, this is
Bamboo.
handmade bamboo by a local artisan here. So if your kids are into playing with swords, fake ones anyway, you can get those here in Vilcabamba and Loja.
All right, guys, I got to wrap. We're going to go. I'm heading out after this to go interview a local builder who's a husband and wife team, architect engineer team, who are awesome. They participate in our lifestyle retreats.
And we've partnered with them.
We've partnered with them on several things. And so that'll be a great interview. English, but we'll talk construction, all that. So check that out on the channel when you get a chance.
Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for making it to the end. We hope to see you here one day.
So until then,
We'll see you next time.
ciao, guys.
If you're interested in real estate properties, all of our property videos will now be uploaded on a different channel. Please click the link in the description down below.